What's the creepiest thing you've seen at a sleepover? When I was in 6th grade, a girl had a slumber party for her birthday. There were maybe 5 or 6 of us girls at her house. Their house was kind of run down and the parents didn't give a rat's butt what we did, and they constantly swore. It was an interesting environment. She had 2 younger brothers, 3rd grade maybe, who also had some friends who were girls, same age, over for the night. I walked downstairs and they had one of the boys' dongs out and the girls were playing with it. I was so shocked because of course I'm only in 6th grade and haven't been exposed to stuff like this before. I went and told the birthday girl, who just laughed it off. Super weird.
We now have a Discord. Check out the server in the link in the description.
Story 2. Spent the night for the first time at a friend's house with another friend. Both were great guys, but later in the night after we smoked weed, we went out into his den to watch TV. I'm on the armchair, both of them on the love seat. They toss me a blanket and grab one themselves. He turns on adult content and they both proceed to start beating their meat under the same blanket. And since it was my first time getting high, I just stared flabbergasted at what was happening. So I told them I had to go do it in the bathroom for privacy. But I just sat on the toilet for like an hour and went back outside when I heard the TV change to something else. Not really creepy, but their just complete and total assumption that I would partake with them felt really strange to me. No, this is creepy. Mostly weird, but also a little bit creepy. That's definitely not something that I've ever done at a sleepover. But hey, at least they had the decency to get blankets, right? Right. Story 3. First time staying at a friend's house when I was about 10 or so. I moved around a lot as a kid, so we were new friends and I didn't know her that well. Her stepdad came in to say goodnight and gave her a big, long hug. She went really quiet and then told me she was glad I was staying over. A few weeks later, she didn't come into school on Monday. Tuesday night on the news, they reported a man had been arrested for touching and assaulting a minor, and named the fairly short street she lived on. She didn't come back to school. We moved again a few months later, and I never saw her again. I still remember the look on her face after he hugged her. As a child, I didn't understand, but as an adult, looking back, it makes me stabby. Yeah, this kind of takes the creepy cake. That's just disgusting. Oh, I hate that so much. I'm with you, OP. It makes me a bit stabby too. Story 4. I was at a sleepover with around 8 girls my age when I was around 10. At this point, it's already morning and only one of us isn't awake yet. She starts sleepwalking, arms out in front of her, slowly ambling around like a stereotypical zombie, calling out the name of the girl who was hosting us, but slowly and slightly slurred. Everybody except for me was really freaked out. I was having the time of my life watching. They would try to get away from her, but she would follow us around the room. She would stop following you if you got separated or weren't the specific girl she was calling out for. At one point, she went over to the armchair, curled up on it for a while, and then got back up. Took one of the pillows on it and sleepwalked over to the couch where we were all huddling up. Everybody scatters and she sits down for a bit. Gets back up, grabs the wrong pillow and goes back over to the armchair, puts the pillow down, then suddenly stops. Picks the pillow back up, exchanges it with the correct pillow and brings it back to the armchair. Absolutely fascinating. Went on for like 2-ish hours. When she eventually woke up, we asked what the hell she had dreamt. Turns out she dreamt the girl was kidnapped and she was trying to save her this entire time. That's why she kept calling out for her and following people around. It was so cool. I agree with OP, the switching of the pillows to get the correct one on the armchair is fascinating. Sleepwalking is something I've never understood. I don't do it myself and I don't actually think I know anyone who does. I'm sure there's like a whole study into it. It seems very cool. Story 5. I was staying over at a friend's house with others around junior year of high school. We were upstairs in his room just eating pizza and playing games, when the friend hosting us starts staring out the window. He mutes the TV and gets the room quiet, and we hear someone wailing. It didn't sound like anyone in pain or fear though, just someone screaming to scream. Keep in mind, this is at 1 a.m. in the morning and on a dead-end street with only one functioning street post. We're all looking out the window at this point and hear the wailing getting closer to the entrance of the street. With the minuscule amount of light there is, we all saw a silhouette of a super tall guy sprinting like a deer across the sidewalk. The wailing faded the farther the guy ran away. We ended up staying up until like 6 a.m. because we were too spooked to sleep. Story 6. Sleeping over. Dude hears his dad coming and makes me hide in the closet and tells me not to make a sound. Whatever transpired outside that closet sounded normal enough, and then the dad left. I've told this before, and I really don't know if the kid was abused or in what way, but I swear to God, whatever that dad did other times was really bad. And just that little situation still bothers me when I think about it. Story 7. When I was about 11 or 12, I got invited over with maybe 5 other girls for a sleepover. Everything was normal until the middle of the night. We're all sitting in her bedroom with the door closed when somebody starts frickin' pounding on the door. I mean, I thought it was going to break off its hinges. We're dead quiet for a minute, and then some dude starts screaming, "Let me in, I want to see your pajamas!" Friend says she knows who it is, opens the door and tells him to screw off. Turns out it was her single mother's friend, Red Pound Pal. He had come over at some point, they got drunk, and he decided it would be fun to scare the crap out of us since we didn't know he was there. The pajamas comment was still creepy though. Yeah, I don't love the pajamas comment. That's weird. If it's just like, haha, I'm gonna scare these girls, there are other things you could have said. That's just strange, man. Story 8. Not seen, but heard. I grew up in a tiny frickin' white bread mountain town. Think South Park on TV, but actually that small. I lived out in the woods. We were wandering around at night in a rundown old abandoned house. Made it to the attic, and there was a hole in the wall. We were walking towards the hole on the opposite side of the house from the stairs. Our only exit out was the hole and down 2 floors or the stairs. Cue a loud crash, a rustle, a growl, 2 floating green eyes, and the most blood-curdling death scream you've ever heard in your life. So the crash was something downstairs being pushed over by my dog I didn't know followed us. The rustle was a rabbit, I assume. You'll see why in a moment. The growl was my dog being a frightened jerk like us. The eyes were my dog's eyes. The scream? Oh, sweet frickin' Jesus, the scream. It was a rabbit getting nailed by a predator, hence my assumption on the rustle. If you don't know what a screaming rabbit sounds like, look it up. And hell yeah, I crapped myself, but screw you if you think you wouldn't. Story 9. I don't know if this is creepy or not, but when I was in 5th grade, I went to a slumber party that my sister's friend had. So I was like the one boy in a gaggle of 4th grade girls. Oh, also the host girl's 4-year-old brother was there. Anyway, the night's going on and I'm on a couch by myself reading or trying to go to sleep. This is like 30 years ago, so I don't know. The girls were giggling and teasing each other and they dared one girl to come over and kiss me. I freaked out and spat in her face. They all went, ooh, and I think she cried and I've been regretting that playfully ever since. Story 10. Once I slept over at my friend's house. Let's just call him John. His parents were divorced at the time and still are. This will be important later. We stayed up all of the first day that I got there and the second, but slept like half of the third and last day that I was there from how tired we both were. We were generally just enjoying our sleepover, playing video games, eating junk food, joking around, just normal sleepover stuff. When on the second day that I was there, weekend by the way, John's mom started freaking out, acting really weird and paranoid. Keep in mind that John's older sister and brother were also in the house. So anyway, John's mom is still acting really weird and we ask her, what's up? She tells us to go back into our rooms and not come out. This is where we start to also feel worried. Not only for us, but for his mom. So we go back to just playing video games to get our mind off things. Not 10 minutes pass by when we hear footsteps and leaves crunching outside of our window. And we start to freak out and turn off the lights in the room as to not be seen by whoever was outside. We hear knocking on the window and we see a guy who's at least 6 feet tall staring through it. Keep in mind that we had just turned off the lights and it was pitch black, so there was no way he saw us. We run out of the room to tell John's mom about this and she is nowhere to be found. Turns out the guy that was looking through our window was John's mom's ex-husband, who she had divorced not long ago. He had been stalking her and was reportedly planning on unaliving her that night. I guess she had a gut feeling or something because she left to one of her friends' houses and left John's older brother in charge of us, without telling either me or John, so we were pretty confused. Definitely not the scariest thing that has happened, but definitely creepy since now I know that he was planning on unaliving her. I still talk to John every now and then and even slept over a lot even after what happened. Also, the ex-husband apparently broke a window which we didn't hear and broke the lock to the back door. OP, what are you saying this isn't really that creepy? Or at least saying definitely not the scariest thing that has happened. This is horrifying. I would be losing it. Am I just a coward? That is a man with an intent to, and yet you're like, oh, I know it's not the scariest. Come on, that's scary. Story 11. I was in 8th grade at a friend's backyard campout. He invited myself, a mutual friend, jerk, but I was dating his older sister, and a weirdo from our grade. The night is fine, but later the jerk bugs the weirdo to helicopter dong, and he does. This isn't the strangest part, though. Later on, we go walking around the neighborhood, and the weirdo eventually spills that he has a gun. We ask him about it, and he said that he actually has it on him. We're floored and don't believe him, until he pulls out a revolver from his jacket pocket. He said that he brought it to show us, but got nervous, so he kept it a secret. We became afraid of a cop finding us with it, so we walked back. I didn't really sleep that night as I was watching him. Psycho. And this is why, everybody, if you own a firearm with a child in your home, you need a gun safe. Or just in general, you need a gun safe to safely store your gun so that no one else can get them. If you collect firearms or just want a gun, fine, sure. I wouldn't, but it's your right. But you have to store it carefully. It is a deadly weapon that kids are way too drawn to for some reason. Story 12. The party was over and I was pretty drunk. One homeboy was on acid and the other was stone cold sober. I'm thoroughly against drunk driving, lost way too many friends to something so silly. So naturally, I was gonna crash there. Anyway, we're all chilling there on the edge of sleep, and I heard the sound of a woman's voice behind me. My head snapped to the sliding glass door to the backyard, yet no one was there. As I turn my face forward, I see that all three of us looked simultaneously. We all looked at each other with wide eyes and investigate outside. Nothing. In the morning, I asked my friend whose house it was if anything had ever happened. Turns out, before they owned the house, a chick had unalived herself in the backyard with a .38. Whilst he was telling this story, his brother disappeared and came back with a shell casing they had found as kids playing in the dirt. Guess what caliber it was? A .38. He's an avid gun owner and may have just had a .38 shell souvenir in his room and brought it out to spook us, but still. Oh, I love a spooky story that isn't really explained at the end. What was the woman's voice? Why did they all hear it? Ugh, that's some creepy stuff. Story 13. School trip in middle of North Wales. It was an outdoor/activity type school trip. With it being in the middle of Wales, the night times were freaking creepy, as the place was in the middle of a load of fields. This wasn't helped by the fact that we were about 12 and there were a ton of different ghost stories about the site. The most well-known ghost story was that of Pegleg, the ghost of a pirate who roamed the corridors. We were all sharing different rooms. Ours was a larger room with about 6 of us all spread out. We were sharing a room with a very strange kid. Let's call him Neil. Neil didn't say much at all for the whole week. Anyway, it was well past lights out, and the night had been spent buzzing with stories of Pegleg joking about who he was gonna get. Of course, these jokes were covers for the fact that we were scared crapless about being stuck in the middle of Wales with an evil pirate spirit on the loose. The room was straight out of a horror film. It had super thin curtains with shadows of branches swaying through. I was close to nodding off when I happened to glance at the bottom of my bed. There was somebody there. Right at the foot of my bed, outlined on the front of the window, a figure just stood there. I broke land speed records when I launched myself to the light switch to wake everyone up. It was frickin' Neil. Story 14. I'm paraphrasing here because it's definitely been a minute since I've heard this story, but there was a story about a girl who was having a birthday party/sleepover, and OP went. OP and the birthday girl were really close along with their families, and they seemed like a happy, normal family. They eventually went to bed and OP was on the outside of the bed. She woke up in the middle of the night to laughing. All the other girls were asleep. She looks around the room and sees the birthday girl's dad on all fours staring at OP and laughing like a maniac. He's laughing as if he had heard the funniest joke ever. You know those moments in school when your friend says something funny and you're doing everything you can to not burst into laughter? It was like that. He was laughing like a child. OP is terrified but somehow manages to fall asleep. When they wake up, it was all pancakes and smiles from her parents. Well, birthday girl, I think her name is Natalie, so we'll call her Nat, had another birthday party at one point, and OP decided that she'll suck it up and go. After all, Nat is her best friend. She decides to secure a spot in the middle of her friends on the bed. Of course, Natalie's family is all happy smiles and perfect cookie-cutter family. They go to bed, and once again, OP wakes up and is full of dread. She looks around the room and sees Nat's dad and mom around the corner, and they look mad, real mad. Like their faces were contorted into furious snarls, noses scrunched, and teeth clenched as hard as they could. It almost would have been comical how angry they looked, if it was in a different context. I don't remember much else from the story, other than the fact that before Nat and her family eventually moved away, OP's mom and Nat's mom were having a conversation about another family in the neighborhood. Nat's mom says, "Well, you never know what goes on behind closed doors." If anyone can find this story, I'd be very appreciative. To me, this kind of sounds like a kid just having weird night terrors/sleep paralysis something. Don't get me wrong, absolutely horrific. Terrifying. But at the same time, I doubt this actually happened. It's just a little too weird. But of course, maybe it did. Maybe it's just one of those things that you would never believe in a million years. Fact is stranger than fiction, they often say. Story 15. I once went for a sleepover with a couple of buds to one of our friends' place. It was a drive for over 3 hours at late in the night. Turns out the place where he had his house was in a really rural and secluded place. So to reach the house, we had to go through some really creepy roads, and I mean creepy. No streetlights other than that of my car, no one on the street, no network, nothing. Only barren land and patches of trees around. So when we finally reached the place, it turned out to be a really small rural community and not a single soul. What was creepy about this area was the minute we stopped to find the house, every single person was standing outside looking at us. It was easily the creepiest thing I've seen. The house was in some dense forest area with no other house than that of my buds. We told him and the entire fam what we had witnessed. They simply laughed and brushed it off as us imagining stuff. We left after a few hours due to how creepy that whole ordeal was. OP, they didn't happen to offer you any Kool-Aid or anything, right? Because this sounds like grade A cult. I know it's probably not, but it does, doesn't it? Small rural community, everyone going outside to see someone driving by or looking for the house. I don't know, smells like a cult to me. Story 16. It was my birthday sleepover. Everything was going semi-normal till about 11. My mother and baby sister were trying to sleep, while my friend chases us around the house, threatening to unalive us. Obviously, we are very creeped out. My mom and baby sister somehow sleep through this. She says, "It's just a game, calm down, OMG," multiple times. She's literally holding a knife from when we cut the cake at this point, and my other non-psycho friend and I are hiding in the downstairs closet. Thankfully, some sort of switch flipped in her brain and she says, "Come on guys, game's over, let's go sleep." This was one of the only times I have ever been threatened with a knife. We honestly thought we would be unalived that night. Story 17. We were 8 or 9 years old back in the mid-90s, and for whatever reason, one of the kids got a CB radio from his dad, and we all took turns getting to use it and thought it was the coolest thing ever. Anyway, a group of us were spending the night at my buddy's on the same street. It's late and we all decide to get on the CB and to see what's going on. We get to a channel when we hear this faint talking in the background and we call out, "Breaker, breaker," and this weird, sinister-sounding voice answers, "Go ahead, breaker." And we all kind of look at each other and respond, "How's it going tonight?" And the guy on the other end just starts mumbling, and then yells out all of my friends' names in the room, and who our parents are and where we live, and proceeds to start laughing and tells us to be careful. Now, for all of you that grew up post-social media, people having access to your information was really uncommon. We were startled, and a couple of kids were nearly in tears. We talked to everyone's parents, and they were equally as startled. Found out about 10 years ago that it was my dad screwing with us. He had completely forgotten about it until one of my buddies brought it up. Yeah, this definitely seems like a prank you play on your kids that needs a little bit of a debrief session, you know? But first of all, incredible prank. That would scare the pants off of any kid on Earth, I guarantee it. It would probably scare the crap out of me now. But yeah, when it's happening to young kids, just let them know what the truth is a little while after. Don't just leave them in the mystery that someone knows them and their parents and where they live. That's a bit bad. A fun one to end it on, though.